Nobody in that prison had any idea the most dangerous man in the place was sitting right there, quiet, eating slowly, taking every humiliation without so much as a flinch. Still as a statue, Miguel Navarro treated the violence around him like background static, until that silence started to feel heavy and that weight turned into a threat. On paper, he was just another convict transferred from the capital, but fate had other plans. Sierra Negra Military Penitentiary, out in the dry interior of Oaxaca, wasn't your run-of-the-mill lockup. Built atop the rubble of an old Mexican army outpost, deep in the hills and ringed by razor wire and poured concrete, it held the kind of men who couldn't vanish and couldn't be seen. Traitors, compromised agents, soldiers who'd been cut loose. In that place, discipline and fear walked hand in hand. Inmates didn't really have names. They were known by their crimes. And the only law that mattered was the law of the strongest. Where the sun made the concrete crack and the dust tasted faintly of iron, authority didn't come from the guards. It came from the monsters the system had decided to bury alive. And the biggest of them all went by a name that made even the jailers swallow hard. Rafael El Carnicero Galvan. A dishonorably discharged ex-soldier feared even by other prisoners, Galvan had turned the mess hall into his throne, and the inmates into his foot soldiers. A mountain of a man, tattooed with the maps of his battles and marked with scars, his eyes were glass cold. When he walked into a room, sound seemed to fall away. With a single motion, his cronies moved like trained dogs, ready to do his bidding. That stifling morning, Miguel was marched into the food line. The clatter of metal trays was drowned by the buzz of flies and the suspicious hush of the men. The sky was clear, but the heat made the air thick and slow. Miguel took the last table, alone, chewing carefully. Every movement was measured, eyes alert, body still. There was a tension about him like a cocked gun. That's when Galvan saw him. Standing flanked by his men, he watched the newcomer with contempt. That calm irritated him. Galvan was a predator. He sniffed weakness. And in that silence, he caught a scent he didn't like. Control. Look who's here, a well-behaved little lamb, acting holy and all, Galvan muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. The low laughs around him sounded like a warning. Galvan strode over to Miguel with slow, practiced steps, stopped at the table, said nothing. He ripped a piece of cornbread off his tray and hurled it to the floor, grinding it under his boot. Miguel didn't react. He kept eating. Calm as you like. As if nothing had happened. The move read as fear, but it wasn't. What nobody there, not Galvan, not the guards, not the other inmates, knew was that Miguel wasn't just another convict. He was a quiet legend of the National Intelligence Service. A ghost inside Black Ops. A man trained to watch, to infiltrate, to eliminate. Call sign Alpha 12. Field name Cuervo. But now he was there by his own choice, and he had a target. The Sierra Negra Military Penitentiary wasn't just a dumping ground for dangerous men. It was a ticking time bomb. Built between mountains and accessible only by air, the place operated under the pretense of rehabilitating disgraced soldiers and exiled agents. But in reality, it was a graveyard for the forgotten. Time didn't heal there, it corrected. The yard, where prisoners walked under the blistering sun, was split into invisible zones. Galvan ruled the west sector, home to the most violent inmates. Those coming from military courts, usually ex-cops or low-ranking soldiers, were sent to the east sector, known as the graveyard of whole men. Few lasted more than a few weeks. Miguel had been placed there as if he were one of them, but he was watching. Every detail. The guards' routines, the whispered codes between prisoners, and above all, Galvan himself. Because Miguel hadn't been sent there to serve time. He'd been embedded with one objective: to uncover and eliminate a weapons smuggling ring operating from inside the prison, involving active duty officers. The mission orders were simple and silent. No contact, no backup, just the goal. And Miguel was the right man to get it done. Around him, tension was constant. Many inmates were ex-agents, ex-rebels, or informants who'd crossed the line. Others were just disposable pieces. But two men caught Miguel's eye from the start. First was Padilla, a former Navy captain now bearded and cold-eyed. He spoke to no one, except an old man named Gutierrez, who limped and carried a torn Bible, more as a talisman than a token of faith. Gutierrez was different. A survivor, the kind who knew too much but pretended not to. Some called him crazy, but Miguel sensed there was a man there who'd seen too many things. Maybe even the truth about this place. One quiet night, Miguel approached him. "Gutierrez, you know Galvan, don't you?" The old man lifted his gaze slowly. Didn't answer right away. Then muttered, "He shouldn't be here. He's here by choice, just like you." Miguel didn't reply, but he understood. The old man knew, and that made him either a liability or an ally. The next day, Miguel began to carve out his territory, not through violence, but through precision. He helped a medic contain a breakdown in the east sector, stopped 2 inmates from killing each other in the yard, and earned the quiet respect of a few men. It was strange. No one understood why Galvan hadn't ordered anyone to take him out yet, as if he were waiting. The answer came sooner than expected. For the first time, Galvan spoke to Miguel directly, not in front of everyone, but during yard time. "Cuervo, right?" he said, not meeting his eyes. "They were smart to send you." Miguel said nothing. "Inside here, even monsters have bosses." Galvan raised his eyes. "And I only follow orders bigger than yours." That line flipped a switch. Miguel now knew Galvan wasn't just a prison tyrant. He was a link, a cog in something larger, operating above the penitentiary itself. The real enemy wasn't locked up. He was inside the system. That night, Gutierrez vanished. By morning, his body was found in the west sector. No wounds. Just open eyes, like he'd died seeing something he shouldn't have. For Miguel, it wasn't a warning. It was a declaration of war. The days following Gutierrez's death turned the prison into a minefield. Inmates walked in silence, even the violent ones avoiding eye contact. The old man had been respected, not for strength, but for what he knew. And that's exactly what got him killed. Miguel didn't show anger. He didn't lash out. But something changed. He stopped hiding behind neutrality. He moved through the yard, through the groups, not to make allies, but to watch. Everyone felt it. His silence had shifted. It wasn't the silence of avoidance anymore. It was the silence before the storm. By the next Tuesday at dawn, a fire ripped through the maintenance wing. No alarms, no cameras. Officially an electrical fault. But Miguel knew better. It was evidence being burned. He'd traced a smuggling route for makeshift weapon parts, saw blades, pipes, detonators. It all moved through that wing. With that gone, his only lead left was Padilla, the ex-Navy captain. Since Gutierrez's death, Padilla had been too quiet. Miguel confronted him in the cafeteria, sitting across the table, cutting straight to the point. "You know why he was killed." Padilla kept eating, eyes down, then said, "Because he didn't get the game. In here there's no innocent, no guilty, only survivors." Miguel leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I didn't come here to survive." That made Padilla look up. For the first time he saw it, Miguel wasn't just another plant. There was something personal behind the mission. Padilla talked. Galvan wasn't acting alone. He reported to someone outside, a man who came weekly under the excuse of internal audits, his briefcase never checked by scanners. Registered name, Colonel Salcedo. Miguel knew that name, and what it meant. Salcedo had led a failed operation years earlier in northern Mexico. An entire village wiped out by mistake. The case was buried. But Miguel had been there, not as a soldier, as a civilian. This mission wasn't just duty, it was personal justice. Knowing that, Miguel shifted strategy. He had to force Galvan's hand, expose him, make him act without cover. The moment came during a supply delivery in the yard. Miguel accidentally blocked Galvan's crew from reaching the first shipment, the ones that always carried hidden crates. The goons reacted, but Miguel didn't back down. He knew one step back would kill his edge. Galvan appeared minutes later, tense, but smirking. "You're playing with fire, Cuervo." Miguel stared back. "I've been to hell, Galvan. You're just the smoke." The air thickened. Guards noticed but didn't intervene. They were used to blood. as long as it didn't spill on the wrong side. That night, Miguel slept ready for a fight, and it came. Two men slipped into his cell, silent, blades in hand. But Miguel wasn't a normal man. With sharp, economical moves, he twisted the first attacker's wrist until bone cracked, used his body as a shield, and dropped the second with two quick strikes to the throat. When the guards arrived, they found Miguel standing, breathing steady, two bodies at his feet. The attackers were thrown into solitary, Miguel isolated, but he'd already won the unseen battle. He'd shattered Galvan's aura of untouchable power. By the next morning, nobody looked at Galvan the same way again. He was still feared, but now, Miguel was respected, and that changed everything. The prison was changing, quietly, but visibly. Men now avoided crossing paths with Miguel, not out of fear, out of respect. The rare kind, the kind born not from brute force but from control, from complete mastery of himself and everything around him. In the infirmary wing, Padilla watched from afar. The activity had slowed. After the failed hit, Galvan had pulled back. But retreat didn't mean weakness. It meant preparation. Meanwhile, Miguel began to move closer to a new name that had surfaced quietly. Lieutenant Arias, a former military engineer, convicted for leaking classified intel to paramilitary groups. Discreet, polite, and cursed with a photographic memory. Miguel approached him without threats, only facts. "I saw your name in intel reports. You designed the access routes for mobile units, inside Sierra Negra." Arias hesitated, then nodded. "That was before. Now I just want to stay alive." "Then tell me, how does the weaponry get in?" Arias took a deep breath. "It doesn't. It's already here." Miguel frowned. "What do you mean?" "The prison isn't the entry point. It's the hub. They use inmates to assemble and test components. The parts come in with food and medical supplies. They leave through waste disposal or medical transfer crates. Everything's documented. Everything looks clean." It was more than Miguel expected. The penitentiary wasn't just a hiding place. It was a covert weapons factory. From that moment, Miguel switched into silent warfare mode. No guns, no backup. But he had something few men in there did: information and purpose. He started small, disrupting deliveries, tampering with boxes, leaving false trails to trigger mistakes. The system began to falter. Cracks appeared among Galvan's men. One of them, Reyes, started questioning his boss. "Why haven't we killed him yet?" he asked. "Because you don't kill a government man without orders," Galvan replied, tension hidden behind his calm voice. That detail mattered. Galvan knew, or suspected, Miguel wasn't just another inmate, and that suspicion kept him in check. One wrong move, and Galvan would become a target himself. But the cracks were spreading. During a staged inspection, Miguel intercepted a hidden shipment of rifle parts. He pretended not to notice, and handed the crate directly to the guards. Made it look like Galvan had lost his grip on the operation. Days later, a new visitor arrived. Colonel Salcedo, dressed in civilian clothes, calm face, sharp eyes. He walked straight through the gates, spoke briefly with the warden, met with Galvan, and without realizing it, was being watched from above by Miguel, hidden in the observation tower. The confirmation came not from words, but posture. Salcedo wasn't just a contact, he was the mastermind. The prison was his front. He'd built it as a facade, using the military framework, fake identities, and inmates as labor. Now Miguel knew, and he needed to act. Fast. That night, he went to Padilla. "I need 10 minutes outside my cell. Just access to the admin wing. Tonight only. If they catch you, they won't." Padilla hesitated, then gave in. Used an old access code, still active, to unlock one of the service routes. Miguel slipped inside the office. Silent, fast. He copied data, photographed files, gathered names, officers, politicians, middlemen. Galvan was just a pawn. Salcedo was the machine. But when Miguel returned to his cell, one detail froze him. The door was open. Inside, an envelope. No note. Just one object. A military pin engraved with the initials SIDE, the National Intelligence Service he'd once belonged to. He wasn't alone. Another operative was inside the prison. Or worse, someone knew exactly who he was. The CID pin wasn't just a warning. It was surgical, a taunt, perfectly calculated. A sign that someone in the shadows knew his identity, his mission, and the agency's codes. Paranoia took hold fast. Every stare, every footstep behind him now carried weight. Miguel, a man trained to trust logic and patterns, was facing the one enemy he couldn't outfight: doubt. The next morning, a random inspection swept through every wing. Cells turned upside down, papers seized, men dragged to isolation. Officially routine. In truth, a hunt. But for who? Miguel stayed calm, waited, listened, until he heard Padilla had been taken. Official reason: smuggling contraband. But Miguel knew better. Padilla had been burned as an accomplice. That changed everything. Alone again, Miguel drafted a new plan: expose Salcedo to the outside world, send the data to a secure contact. To do that, he'd need access to the central communications terminal, protected by military authentication. There was only one chance: Veterans Day. The day the administration gathered in the yard for their ceremonial honors. A morale trick for the high-ranking inmates. The only time internal security relaxed. Miguel waited, planned, and when it came, he moved. Dressed in a maintenance uniform, he slipped into the tech crew, entered the admin wing, logged in, terminal on, files attached, route encrypted, recipient, external unit 046, trust, codename of the retired officer who'd trained him, Commander Esparza. Message sent. But as he stepped out, the alarm blared. Miguel didn't run. His pace stayed even, calm. But turning the last corner, he found someone waiting. Galvan. Alone. No goons. No expression. Found you, Galvan said. Miguel stopped. I know. Galvan tossed something to the floor. A radio. The channel was live. They're coming. Not for me. For you. Salcedo? Galvan nodded. He knows you blew it all wide open, but he doesn't know I let you. Miguel narrowed his eyes. Why? Because you're not the only one with a score to settle. They called me a monster, but they forgot who built me. Salcedo doesn't use me anymore. He wants us both erased. That was it. The turning point. Galvan, the tyrant of Sierra Negra, was no longer the enemy. He was the next target. If someone's going down tonight, Galvan said, pulling a key from his pocket, let's make sure we go down standing. Miguel understood. The war had begun. They both knew they wouldn't make it out alive. But apart, they'd be hunted and wiped out. That night, the prison gates locked early. No warnings. No announcements. An unmarked helicopter hovered above. Salcedo's men moved in. No uniforms, no insignias. Just weapons. This wasn't a containment op, it was an execution. Miguel and Galvan fought like soldiers, one with precision, the other with instinct. They raided the infirmary, cracked open supply lockers, turned tools into traps, makeshift explosives, sharpened steel, even fire extinguishers. When the black-clad team entered, they hit a trap. The first squad was wiped out in a controlled blast that sealed off the main corridor. The second, caught between smoke and fire, retreated. But not all of them. In the yard, Salcedo appeared. In person, calm, armed. Miguel stepped from the shadows. It's over. Salcedo smirked. Nothing's over. You think dumping files changes a system? No, Miguel said. But it changes the ending. Galvan emerged beside him, bleeding but standing. You made monsters, Colonel. You just forgot they learn. Without hesitation, Miguel fired. One shot. Clean. Center mass. Salcedo fell, speechless. Silence followed. The war ended there, but not without a price. Galvan, staggering, leaned against Miguel. Your turn now, he said, and fell. No glory, but redemption. Salcido's body was gone before sunrise. No sirens, no announcements. Hooded officers came in, scrubbed every trace clean and vanished like shadows. The helicopter that had hovered over the penitentiary the night before now hung in total silence, as if nothing had happened. But something had. Inside Sierra Negra Military Penitentiary, the air wasn't thick with fear anymore. It was thick with anticipation. Everyone knew something huge had gone down. The administrative wing was half destroyed. 2 bodies had been taken out. And for the first time since the prison's foundation, no one had stepped up to take control. Galvan was dead. And Miguel? He didn't return to the common cell block. He was quietly transferred to an isolated wing, not as punishment, but by protocol. The guards didn't speak. They just followed orders from voices no one saw. There were rumors, but no names, no accusations. Only one fact: the man everyone once feared had become a living legend. From his new cell, Miguel drew different looks. Not challenging ones anymore, measured ones. Careful. Some carried respect. Others, unease. But all shared one certainty: he had done the impossible, and he was still standing. Soon, a new warden arrived, quietly, without ceremony. A former army major with a rigid posture and eyes like dry stone. His name, Ramirez, appointed by the high command to restore order. He asked to see Miguel on the 3rd day. The conversation was short. "We received your transmission. The material's being processed," Ramirez said, scrolling through reports on his screen. "And what are they going to do with it?" "Whatever needs to be done, but don't expect a thank you." Miguel nodded. He already knew. "And me?" Ramirez studied him. "Officially you don't exist, but the prison goes on. The system needs balance. You understand that, Cuervo?" "I do. But balance isn't silence." Ramirez closed the terminal. "Stay a while longer. After that you choose. Walk out the same way you came in, or disappear for good." The offer was clear. Real freedom, but erased from every record. A ghost of the state. No way back. Or remain inside, watching, indefinitely. Miguel didn't answer. Not yet. Outside the admin wing, the prison was calmer. The internal factions had fallen apart. The weapons operation dismantled. Names tied to the scheme began leaking to the press. The scandal couldn't be buried for long. But inside the walls, everything had shifted. Padilla, released from solitary, had taken on an unexpected role: leadership through reason. He started organizing work shifts, drafting a silent code of conduct where violence was the last resort. Not out of kindness, but strategy. He looked at Miguel with restrained reverence. He knew what the man had done, and the cost. In his isolated cell, Miguel kept his same routine: controlled exercises, reviewing internal reports, complete silence. He didn't engage, didn't hide, just observed. And when night came, he'd stare through the narrow cracks in the concrete ceiling, knowing that though he had won the war in that place, his mission wasn't over. Time passed. No calendar, no clock, but it passed. Miguel was no longer the new guy, nor the plant. Now he was simply a man no one dared define. The halls of Sierra Negra had changed. The silence there wasn't tense anymore. It was respectful. The gangs that once ruled each sector had dissolved. The power vacuum left by Galvan hadn't been filled by force. It had been replaced by something subtler, order born from example. And that example came from Miguel. He didn't command, didn't lecture, didn't demand. But his mere presence altered behavior. Inmates who once fought for territory now organized yard schedules. Mindless violence gave way to silent vigilance. Everyone sensed that under the watch of that quiet man, there was no room for weakness or ego. Padilla, now more active, started small support groups among inmates. He built an informal code: protect the weak, rotate duties, zero tolerance for exploitation. Miguel didn't intervene, but he didn't step away either. When necessary, he appeared. And that was enough. But the real test came from outside. A new batch of prisoners arrived. Different. Not soldiers, Civilians tied to cartels, militias, and off-the-books intelligence networks. Men who didn't respect hierarchy, only fear. And as soon as they arrived, they began to provoke. Miguel became their target, first with stares, then with words, finally, with action. In the laundry room, two of them surrounded him. One swung a makeshift metal weapon. The other filmed with a hidden device, clearly sent to humiliate him to show weakness. Miguel didn't strike back immediately. He deflected, dodged, disarmed. No blood, no rage. But when the edited video leaked, showing only him backing off, the story changed. Word spread. Miguel had lost his power, but he knew better. Real power doesn't come from fear. It comes from control. And now, he had to prove it. That night he found the man who had filmed him, entered his cell, said nothing, just sat down across from him. The man, shaking, tried to explain. Talked about orders, about being part of a larger plan, said he was only following commands. Miguel listened in silence, then said only one thing. When you let fear lead you, you become an accomplice. The next morning, the man turned the phone into Warden Ramirez and begged to be moved to another wing. No explanation given. The original footage was recovered, and Miguel's name was cleared. But he didn't celebrate. That moment revealed something deeper. The war outside those walls wasn't over, and its reach had already seeped inside. Miguel began to prepare again, not with weapons, with awareness. He studied old maps of the penitentiary, reviewed communication codes, memorized faces, movements, routines, and he realized he was changing. He wasn't driven by orders anymore, but by conviction. He no longer obeyed invisible voices. He chose what to protect and what to destroy. The prison was no longer his battleground. It had become the frontier between what the system wanted and what had to be done. In the admin wing, Ramirez noticed the change too. He called him in again. "Are you ready to leave?" Miguel took a slow breath. No. Ramirez didn't press. He understood. Miguel was no longer an agent. He was the last wall standing. The weeks that followed marked a quiet but irreversible change. The prison was more organized now, more controlled. But the air still carried something unseen, the feeling that something big was coming. Miguel felt it. The movements had grown subtler. Some of the newly arrived inmates kept to themselves. They received rare visits, always with clearance stamps coming straight from the capital. There were coded transfer orders, schedules changed at the last minute, documents with lines blacked out. Miguel recognized the patterns. This was pre-cover protocol. Something was being erased before it even happened. In Warden Ramirez's office, whole archives were being digitized and transferred, but even he didn't know where they were going. "We've been told to reduce risk," Ramirez said during one of his last talks with Miguel. "You know what that means." Miguel nodded. It meant the system was closing the door, shutting the penitentiary down, scrubbing the evidence, eliminating variables. And he was one of those variables. The partial evacuation order for the East Wing was the first sign. In practice, it meant silent executions. Inmates who knew too much were being transferred under fake paperwork, and none of them came back. Padilla was one of the first to warn him. "They told me I'm being released," he said, eyes tired, voice flat. "But this isn't freedom. It's disposal." Miguel knew. That's why he refused his own offer. Instead, he triggered a dormant protocol, marking the prison as a contaminated zone due to a leak of classified intelligence. It was an old wartime code, but still recognized in certain systems. The goal: create enough outside interference to force an external recovery mission before the executions began. But time was running out, and his enemies were still inside. Among the new arrivals, one face stood out: Elias Zorro Andrade, a former Northern intelligence officer expelled for cartel ties. Smart, manipulative, dangerous in the way only a man with words could be. Zorro quickly allied himself with inmates from the West Wing, slipping through conversations like a ghost, trying to figure out who Miguel really was. "They say you were sent by God. Others say you're just another lunatic on a mission." "Personally, I think you're just a man with too much time and too many ghosts," Zorro told him one afternoon in the yard. Miguel said nothing, but he noted it. Zorro wasn't looking for a fight. He was looking for control. And if anyone was going to interfere with the evacuation, it would be him. So Miguel started sending quiet messages to the older inmates. Subtle gestures, changing routines, scratching coded marks on walls, switching cells without notice. He was reviving what agents used to call the noise code, a silent protocol to coordinate protection without revealing intentions. Padilla understood. There's going to be a war? Miguel looked around. No, there's going to be a choice. That was it. He wasn't here to survive anymore. He wanted to prove, even just once more, that honor and conviction could still exist where everything else had rotted. The helicopter that passed overhead at dawn went unnoticed by most. But Miguel knew. It was the signal. Time was up. The next day the gates would open, not for freedom but to erase the prison's last ghosts. And one of them was still standing. He wasn't leaving without a fight. The sun rose in silence that morning, but the prison was restless, too quiet. Inside the wings, doors began opening one by one, inmates called by false names, escorted for early transfer. Padilla watched through the slit of his door, muscles tight. Miguel hadn't slept. He was already on his feet when the first footsteps echoed down the corridor. At 7:14 a.m., the final roll call began. Aguirre Diego, Mendoza Carlos, Padilla Esteban. The name was spoken like a verdict. 2 armed guards stood at his cell. "I'm not going," Padilla said calmly. They weren't there to negotiate. Then Miguel appeared. "He stays." The guards froze for a moment. They recognized that look, and they knew what it meant. "Orders from above," one insisted. Miguel stepped closer. "Orders have changed." He raised his arm. In his hand, a dirty, battered military radio transmitter, but still working. On the open frequency, a single word blinked in code. "Intercepted." The guards went still. They knew what that meant. Miguel had triggered an official override. The files he'd sent weeks earlier had reached the top. They couldn't be ignored, couldn't be erased. And now, any execution inside the prison would become a public scandal. But a wounded system doesn't retreat without striking back. At 8 a.m., the watchtowers went dark. Unmarked officers slipped in through the back gates, armed, organized. Their leader, Elias Zorro Andrade, revealed at last as the handler of an internal cell still loyal to Salcedo's network. Zorro didn't want to destroy the evidence. He wanted control, to turn Sierra Negra into his new underground fortress. But one obstacle stood in his way. Miguel. The first explosion came from the cafeteria, a distraction. Zorro scattered his men through the corridors, taking key sectors. Allied inmates were freed. Chaos, calculated and cold. Miguel and Padilla moved through the abandoned medical wing, reaching the technical sublevel, a maze of tunnels and forgotten chambers from the prison's military past. There, Miguel had prepared his last line of defense. "You sure about this?" Padilla asked, eyeing the improvised tripwires and rigged tools. "I'm not here to survive," Miguel replied. "I'm here to end it." Zorro didn't take long. He arrived with 7 men, confident. He thought Miguel was cornered. He underestimated what a man with time, skill, and purpose could do. As they entered the main tunnel, the lights went out. One by one, corridors filled with smoke and false echoes, pre-recorded sounds bouncing through the dark. Zorro tried to regroup, but 2 of his men were already down. A third fired on his own ally in panic. Miguel emerged from the shadows. Fast, exact. Not like an inmate. Like a hunter. He dropped the first man with a single blow, dodged a shot, used the wall to spring forward, kneeing another in the chest. Then came face to face with Zorro. "You should have been dead, Cuervo," Zorro spat. "I was," Miguel said. "But I came back for you." The fight was sharp, brutal. 2 trained men, opposite styles. Zorro, wild, aggressive. Miguel, centered, surgical. It lasted less than a minute. In the end, Miguel disarmed him, twisted his wrist until it cracked and drove his fist into the ground beside his head. "You tried to take power by force," he said, "but you forgot. Real power is being invisible." Zorro collapsed. Out cold, Padilla appeared with guards who had sided with Miguel. The coup was over. In the days that followed, Sierra Negra was placed under federal intervention. Warden replaced. Officers dismissed. The leaked files hit the media. Headlines screamed, "Clandestine weapons network operated inside military penitentiary." But Miguel's name never appeared. He was gone again. The Sierra Negra Penitentiary was officially shut down 2 months after the events. Behind closed doors, classified reports circulated hand to hand. Hearings were held in secret, and powerful names quietly vanished from the public eye, under the labels of early retirement or internal review. But no one ever saw Miguel Navarro walk out of those gates. Because he didn't. He disappeared from the records the same way he had lived, silent, precise, and lethal. Ramirez was reassigned to a northern base where his job was to keep quiet. Padilla, surprisingly, was placed in a civilian reintegration program. New name, new life. But he always kept a sealed envelope hidden at home. A dossier sent by Miguel himself, containing the full truth, to be opened only if something ever happened. Of the remaining inmates, some were transferred, others quietly released. All received the same whispered warning. If you ever see him again, look the other way. Because everyone knew, the Crow was still out there, not as a man in hiding, but as a symbol. A reminder that justice still exists where law has failed, that there are still men willing to descend into the darkest corners of the system and return with the truth in their hands. And that's exactly what Miguel had become. On a deserted road between dust and silence, a man with a trimmed beard and sharp eyes passed unnoticed by a toll camera, driving an unmarked vehicle toward an unknown destination. On the passenger seat rested an old notebook, its worn pages carrying only 3 words: "Mission complete, still alive." Months later, in a remote village deep in Jalisco, a child found a rusted metal case buried beneath a stone. Inside were just 3 things: a pin engraved with the initials SEI'd, an empty cartridge, and a faded note. True justice doesn't shout. It acts. No signature. But those who knew the shadows knew exactly who had been there. If this story held you until the end, share it with someone who still believes there are men brave enough to do what's right, even when no one's watching. Leave a comment. Would you have the courage to face the systems alone? Subscribe for more intense stories, real or inspired by hidden truths. And remember, honor may stay silent, but it never fades.